why Larry Flink's BlackRock always seems to be in charge of U.S. fiscal policy when there is an economic crisis of some type, and things of that nature. There's a lot of other examples I could give as well. But ultimately, it leads, to less freedom for us, at least in the post 9/11 era, and more control and power for the government over our lives, regardless of what party is in power.
In this recent interview on Bad Faith with Whitney Webb, we learn about the profound influence of Silicon Valley billionaires on politics and finance, the fusion of big tech with the national security state, and the implications of AI's growing role in government and financial systems. Today, global markets are closely watching the impact of AI on finance and the increasing intertwining of technology and monetary systems. Before we continue this discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel.
So Peter Thiel has openly labeled himself a libertarian, and this has sort of been adopted by both his critics and his acolytes for really quite a long time, but it really doesn't make very much sense. For example, Peter Thiel is on video and also in his writings has referred to, for example, a free market competition as being for losers, and his definition of a capitalist is someone who accrues capital. So the most capitalist person is the person that's holding the most capital, or the richest person in the world. And he argues that the best way to do business is to build monopolies, find a niche, corner it, and build a monopoly. And when Peter Thiel has done that in his own business, he's done it in direct collaboration with three-letter agencies. He did that when he helped create PayPal, and of course later on when he created Palantir, which he did with the direct involvement of several neoconservative figures from the Bush administration, Richard Pearl, John Poindexter, and some others, and then of course became very involved with the CIA, particularly the CIA VC firm In-Q-Tel, in order to produce this company, Palantir, which was really an effort to repackage a Bush era, a post 9/11 sort of Patriot Act era program that was housed within the Pentagon's DARPA called Total Information Awareness, which was widely criticized by the ACLU and a lot of these other, advocate groups, I guess you could say, in that era, for arguing it would eliminate individual privacy, and basically gut the Constitution and a lot of the protections that American citizens have, which is arguably very true. But they realized that if they rebranded this as a private sector program and removed the public sector from it, that perhaps people wouldn't complain. And that was sort of the impetus for Palantir. And so Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, when they were creating it, went to John Poindexter, who is probably best known for being the highest ranking member of the Iran or of the Reagan administration to be prosecuted for his role in the Iran-Contra scandal. He was brought back for the Bush administration to run this program, and at the time was considered the godfather of modern surveillance, because part of what he did as part of his involvement in the Iran-Contra scandal was sort of set up some of these protocols and be involved in other scandals of that era, largely forgotten, that also involved surveilling domestic dissent in the United States. And so Palantir was really sort of an effort to privatize that. And, if it's a private company, it doesn't have to necessarily follow all the rules that it would have to if it was a public sector program. So the decision was made to privatize it. And there was also another DARPA era program that was related to total information awareness that was called LifeLog, which bears a lot of similarities to Facebook, which was actually launched the same day that LifeLog was shut down, in the same era of these DARPA programs being sort of shut down and then relaunched as private sector versions. And then Peter Thiel becomes intimately involved in creating early Facebook and shaping it, and remained on its board for a very long time, and shaped a lot of its policies, including its involvement, for example, in unconstitutional surveillance, where Facebook collaborated along with a lot of other large Silicon Valley companies with the NSA to surveil Americans, for example. And of course, Palantir scrapes all of that data that's on Facebook and social media and uses that to regularly profile people, including Americans, and has been used in efforts to, example, develop predictive policing, which is really pre-crime. And Palantir was openly testing that in minority communities in New Orleans and some other parts of the United States, and trying to develop basically a way to outsource law enforcement and a lot of national security policy, also domestically, basically have an AI algorithm run it. And unfortunately, we're sort of at a point where there's probably going to be efforts, most likely under the incoming Trump administration, under the guise of increasing government efficiency, to put AI in increasingly powerful roles, in government, including in law enforcement and other things. And Palantir is a harbinger of that. And I think, if you look at its history, its CIA involvement, people like Peter Thiel and what this program has actually done and what it has, how it has developed, it's very concerning. So like in the COVID era too, Palantir was granted pretty much unfettered access to American health data and also to all the NHS health data in Britain on government contracts. And there's really been really no meaningful oversight of what Palantir does with that, with people's health data and their history of targeting minorities in particular, and also labeling Americans subversives for intelligence agencies based on Americans' online activity. This is a very troubling company. It's very nothing about it is libertarian or civil liberty minded at all, despite the fact that Peter Thiel frames himself that way. They're also very willing collaborators of this proliferation of AI weapons. You can see that with their intimate involvement in the genocide in Gaza going on right now, and how they've facilitated a lot of these AI kill lists and things that have been used by the IDF, that are not transparent, but are being used to decide if people live or die based on, an AI algorithm deciding how close they're affiliated with an alleged Hamas member.
As we just heard Whitney Webb discuss the influence of big tech billionaires on politics and finance, the fusion of Silicon Valley with the national security state, and the potential risks of AI's control over financial systems. Now let's hear her discuss more on how AI and technology are reshaping our monetary systems and the potential impact on individual freedoms and privacy. Now let's listen to what Whitney Webb has to say.
I think it's important to keep in mind that, a lot has been said about the world, especially the world economy, moving to a post-oil economy and to a data economy. And so you have had, numerous people and analysts say that data is the new oil in this world. And so instead of having oil barons like we had in the industrial age, like the Rockefellers and whatnot, I think there is a race underway to have people develop platforms and try and position themselves as the data barons of the data economy age. Right. And so if you're like Elon Musk, for example, and you openly purchase Twitter because you want, well, he said it was about free speech, but he also said it was about creating an everything app. And that includes his ambition to turn X, formerly Twitter, into a bank, which he aims to be half of the financial system. If you have people living their entire lives on an app, and doing all of their finances and most of their communicating and their consumption of media all on one app, then you have a wealth of data that you can extract from people and then monetize and sell. And that is what pretty much every social media platform does to make all the money that they have, is monetize data that users put out. And then sell it to whoever. And a lot of it is sold to advertisers, but some of it is also sold to government intelligence agencies. And so the fact that you have, people like Peter Thiel in the mix, who created a company that sucks up that data and then uses it to profile people and put them on a quote unquote naughty list for the CIA or any of these other, three-letter agencies that have been, particularly within networks that have been not necessarily open, but there's a very documentable trajectory of them being interested in ways to clamp down on domestic dissent, particularly if there is mass nonviolent opposition to an American war abroad and things of that nature. These are things that I think should be very concerning to Americans. And so even if people are writing in, claiming that they're all about free speech and promoting that, I think their actual ambitions are probably something very different. And so, it's not just what I explained about Elon Musk a second ago. We must also consider that he's one of the main contractors to the Pentagon space program. He's openly building the satellites for intelligence agencies. He's very openly a collaborator with these intelligence agencies that have not, the only time there was a congressional investigation into them was in the 70s, and there was never any accountability. And so when that message is sent, they're going to continue to do their, illegal criminal behavior, especially if they feel like they can get away with it, which they have for a very long time. And so I think, we're in this new, very interesting phase, but I don't really necessarily think it's good, where we're sort of having these oligarchs trying to sort of celebritize themselves and try and build these popular platforms around these particular talking points. But I don't think that's where their motives really lie, because just like in politics, when you're dealing with, oligarchs like this, because frankly, that's what people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are, you should also be following the money and following their incentives, and things of that nature. And I think the outsized role of Silicon Valley figures like those, in politics is very significant, because there really has been a fusion over the past decade plus, of Silicon Valley and the national security state, to the point where you have someone like Eric Schmidt, the former CIA or CEO of Google, basically running the commission that determines how the national security community is going to use AI. As part of the National Security Commission on AI, a few years ago. Why is he in charge of that? And he actually works relatively closely with Peter Thiel at sort of these global conferences where there's meetings of leaders behind closed doors, like the Bilderberg Conference, for example. So I think a lot of their disagreements, Eric Schmidt was a big backer of Hillary Clinton in 2016. Peter Thiel was a big backer of Donald Trump in 2016. For example, they play both sides, but ultimately they agree on a lot of the same policies and where they want to see the global economy or just the world society in general go. And I think ultimately it's a lot about playing people off of each other, divide and conquer, and sort of pushing us towards the same policies, but sort of seeing which sales pitches will fit best with certain demographics, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, there's this push to sort of create a government-issued digital ID. And so, for example, in the case of the United Kingdom, you had the Tories, the conservatives, sell it as a necessary way to resolve the migration crisis over there. But then the Labour Party comes in and pushes for the same thing, but says it's necessary to stop cyberbullying and online hate and hate speech and all of this stuff. So the sales pitches are different, but the policies lead to the same places. And unsurprisingly, in the United States, it's actually been pretty similar to what's going on in the UK, to the point that you have Trump essentially pushing for that same system under the guise of controlling immigration issues, which of course are of major concern to his base. And the person that he just made his border czar, Tom Homan, was a major advocate for this biometric entry exit system for all people entering and leaving the US, which of course would include any American citizen that wishes to travel abroad. But I think a lot of these actors, including Elon Musk, for example, that sort of was a genesis type figure for the Twitter files, there is a goal to sort of frame the quote unquote deep state, as it's called, as Democrat only, and sort of paint the idea that the face of the quote unquote deep state are elected Democrat officials, when in reality, the whole concept of the deep state, which is a term I don't even like to use because it's been so weaponized that it's really meaningless at this point. What it's supposed to refer to are the fact that no matter who is elected to office, there is a group of unelected bureaucrats that run most of the federal government, and that, a certain party can come to power, but certain policies will stay there irrespective if a Democrat wins or a Republican wins. And that's why we get progressively more wars, why American wealth continues to get pilfered.
To watch the full interview, check out the link in the description. Whitney Webb shared invaluable insights on the hidden influence of big tech on our financial systems, the risks of AI's growing control, and the need for awareness about how technology affects our money and privacy. We would love to hear your thoughts on some questions. How do you feel about the increasing role of AI in finance? Do you think big tech's influence on money is a cause for concern? Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe, like, and share our video for more engaging content diving into the innovative world of decentralized technologies.